How this race day nutrition system gets enduro racers maintaining 4+ hours at race speed without hitting the wall, without getting tired, without running out of energy. Excuse me, if you're wondering why I'm not in my normal top today, running with casual Friday for today. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to show you exactly how we fuel our enduro guys and get them to be able to ride a full race at race speed all the way through with a consistent level of energy. So first of all, we'll start off with who this video is for and who it's not for. It's not for recreational riders who don't do any racing. Okay, if you can just have stop and have a breather whenever you feel like it when you're riding and you're okay with that, that's cool. But this is for guys that don't want to have a breather, right? So if you do have a breather, you just do recreational riding, you just stop and have a rest with your mates, and that's great, but you're probably not going to find this video too helpful. It's not for riders who race but don't really race. Like there's some guys that race that just go there to more for the social side. They still stop and have a break whenever they want. They're not really too worried about doing their best. They just go out there to be out there and be part of it. And that's all well and good, but you're just probably not going to enjoy this video. And then the last type of rider that this is not for is riders who want to get better, but don't want to do anything to actually improve. You still want to get pissed the night before, still want to eat the same stuff, still want to eat shit at the track, and don't actually want to change anything. And that's all well and good if you don't want to change anything, but there's change required with what we're about to go through. So who is this for? It's for enduro racers that want to perform at their best on race day. It's for enduro racers who are willing to try new things to get better. Okay, so you're not just stuck in the same rut of doing the same stuff. You understand that to get better, you have to do things differently, and you're open to that. And it's also for enduro racers who want their body to perform at their best on race day, and they understand that nutrition and how they fuel themselves is a big part of that. If you don't think that nutrition and fueling yourself is a big part of how your body performs, I'm not going to try and convince you in this video that that's what you need to do. This is for the guys that already know that nutrition plays a big role, and that's the area that they need to tidy up and refine. So for those of you who, I've just got some notes here to make sure I cover everything. So first of all, for those of you who are new to the channel, who am I? So my name's Andrew Hammer. I started getting riders and racers race fit from 2015, so we're coming up on 10 years now. And we've helped over 400 riders and racers from around the world get race fit using our faster lap system. And then we've got about 14,000 riders and racers from around the world that follow on social media or on email and follow the content that I've been putting together over the years. So the reason that I started coaching and that I started our faster laps program was because I raced motocross for 14 years. So I raced at club level, state level, national level, did a lot of riding. Like for those 14 years, nothing else existed. It was just like 14 back-to-back seasons of riding and racing and getting out there. And one of the things that I really struggled with was my endurance on the bike. I had reasonably good skills. I got to A grade for like most of the riding classes and age groups that I was racing in. So I guess you could say like I was in that higher percentage of riders. But the problem is I never really felt like I got the results that I was capable of. And the reason that I say that is because I'd go to like club days or go to practice days and I'd always be fast or feel like I was doing well. And then I'd get to the state rounds and to the nationals and to these bigger events where the track was a lot rougher and the races were longer and the competition was harder. And I just felt like I never performed at my best. And a big part of that was strength, fitness, and endurance. It's like my body wasn't able to hold my race speed for a full race. And so that's why when we'd go and practice, when I could just stop whenever I wanted or, do a few laps at a time, or we did club days when the races were shorter or the track was smoother, I'd do well. And then we'd get to these bigger races and I just didn't have it in me. I remember going to like one of the nationals we did at Coolum in Queensland, and I was getting like a few laps in and I was just almost rolling around. It's like I'm an A grade rider and I'm like up on the pegs, rolling around over the bumps, looking for smooth lines, getting lapped even by the faster guys. And I'm like, this is not me. I know I can do better than this, but I just didn't know how to fuel myself. My body didn't have the endurance. And so then that led me on the path. Like I was always searching for, all right, what do I need to do to get better, to build my endurance? I was like on the forums, on the websites, you know, seeing what other guys are doing at the track, reading the ADB magazine or Dirt Action magazine to see if there's anything that I could find. And although some of that stuff's helpful, it never gave me a clear answer, because I was always being pulled in different directions. It's like you chat to one person and they're like, yeah, you need to, you know, do heaps of cardio and build your endurance up, go and do cycling because that's what all the pros do. And you're like, all right. Then you chat to someone else and they're like, yeah, you need to do lift weights and do, you know, but you want to do high reps with low weight to build endurance. Okay, cool. Then you get someone else who says, nah, don't even worry about doing gym work or other stuff. The only way you can build fitness is by actually getting out on the bike. So you've got all of these different bits of information, which made it so confusing for me. And I had to learn things the hard way. And part of that is having conflicting advice, and then also not having many knowledgeable people in the area of strength, fitness, nutrition, endurance, specifically for riding and racing. Because you go to, I think we've all had this experience where you chat to someone who's got no idea about riding and they think that the bike does all the work. So it's very hard to get fitness help from someone who thinks that the bike's doing most of the work and they've got no idea what the rider's actually going through. So towards the end of my riding and racing years is when I discovered the race day nutrition system that I'm about to go through with you. And so the great thing about this race day nutrition system is it allowed me to do a few things with my racing. Is I was able to enjoy my racing more because I could get out there and just focus on the riding, not focus on, oh shit, like I can't hang on, my body's breaking down, I'm cramping, I've got sore legs, like I feel lethargic. It then shifted to my skills being the limiting factor rather than my body being the limiting factor. I had more of a framework as well to use when I was going and racing and getting out there for each race. Like I knew what I needed to have before the race and after the race and the night before. I had more of a system, like a framework that I could use a step by step of what I had to do. Whereas before it was just like, oh yeah, have an energy bar. Oh yeah, you know, you feel a bit low on energy, have an energy drink. Or yeah, have this, you know, these glucose tablets. Or yeah, have some pasta the night before. It was kind of like, there wasn't really a method there. It was just all these random bits of information. So making it simple and having a process was really helpful for me, because then I knew exactly what I needed to do. And then I find it's been really helpful for our riders and racers as well, because they have a simple framework that they know that they can follow and they can do every time they go and ride, every time they go and race, so they can feel their best. So the old way of doing things when it comes to endurance and nutrition for the bike is like just little bits and pieces. As I said, like some of the things I've got listed here is like, you know, having pasta the night before race day, eating cereal for breakfast for energy on race day, force feeding lunch on race day to try and get energy in for the afternoon, like having energy bars. I did that, like protein bars that we get from the shop or from the supermarket. Energy drinks, there was this stuff we had called Dark Dog. This was before energy drinks weren't as big back then, but there was this energy drink called Dark Dog, which is like a caffeine, like, you know, Red Bull type drink. So like we'd have those every now and then. Some people use coffee, and you know, say have a coffee before you go and ride, or some people don't eat at all. People are like, you know, you don't feel like eating, don't force your food to eat. Don't force your body to eat, but then you don't eat, and then you're like, shit, I feel shit because I haven't eaten all day. Feel lightheaded and don't feel the best. So I guess that's the old way of doing things, is just like having this hit and miss approach of all of this random stuff that you're trying to throw in and just hoping that someone works, rather than having an understanding of what's going on. So with the new way of doing things and the system that we use with our riders, our race day nutrition system, great things about it is you don't have to force feed food if you don't feel like eating food. So you're not forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do, and you're not having all that food sitting in your stomach. You can eat foods that you enjoy and taste good. So it's relatively flexible. You're not reliant on, oh, I just have to have this thing or just have to have that. You can give your body the fuel source it needs and that it relies on when it's racing. So I didn't know that there's actually 3 types of fuel that the body can use, and there's a preferred fuel source. I had no idea. So we're going to go through that in a second. And the race day nutrition system also helps you eliminate foods that are going to make you feel sluggish. So giving your body, knowing what fuel your body needs and what the best fuel is for it, and then eliminating the stuff that's going to make it feel shit. So there's a 3-pillar system that we use for our ride day nutrition system to dial it in for each of our riders. So the first pillar is what we call the rider fuel pillar. Okay, so what we're going to go through here is how to run your body on race fuel without high-tech gadgets or monitoring devices. So quick story, after I finished racing, so I raced motocross for 14 years, and then after I finished racing, like there was this big gap in my life. So as you can imagine, right, like riding and racing takes a lot of time. When you've done it for 14 years, everything revolves around it. Every night, like you're in the shed, you're cleaning gear, you're going to motocross tracks, you're going to hotels or motels, you're traveling, you're cleaning bikes, like all of that stuff is just continually every week after week after week for most of those 14 years. So after I finished racing, I had like this big gap. I'm like, shit, like I've got all this time, like all this, spare time to do something, and I wasn't doing it. I was used to being competitive and competing and racing, which I enjoyed. So I started doing competitive fitness competitions. So I spent a good 5 years after racing doing these competitive fitness competitions, training 5+ times a week, sometimes training twice a day. Life revolved around doing these fitness competitions and getting fit and eating properly and dialing your body in to be its absolute best that it could be, because fitness competitions rely on purely 100% on your body. It's not reliant on having a great set of shoes or, a great bike or a great piece of equipment. It's purely on your body to perform at its best. So that's where the attention got spent. So there was a problem that I was coming across with when I started doing these fitness competitions and taking them more seriously, is I was finding that my practice days were actually, not practice days, sorry, my training days, so my days when I weren't competing, I was performing better and feeling better. So like I'd rock up to the gym and I've been flogging myself all week and I was feeling better in those training sessions than when I'd like rested before I'd go and compete and tried to eat the right food and done all the right stuff and did all the right stretches and gone to all this extra effort to feel better on competition day, and I was actually feeling worse. I wasn't lifting the weights that I wanted to lift. I wasn't performing as well. I wasn't recovering as well. I was getting out of breath quicker. I was like, why is all this, like I want the opposite on competition day. Like I want to be better than training day, not worse. And I could never understand why. It wasn't until I went to a nutrition seminar with a performance nutritionist, and her name was Claire. So I went and did this seminar, and she was going through how she gets her athletes and the people that she works with to perform and fuel their body at their best. And one thing that stood out that she said carbohydrates are your main fuel source for high intensity training, high intensity activity. So for these fitness competitions that I was doing at a high intensity, carbohydrates were my main fuel source that I was using. And so the problem was when I was competing, I didn't know how to use carbs. I didn't even know that they were the primary fuel source, because most of the time I just get nervous and stressed around competition day, and same on race day. So I wouldn't really eat much food. It was like trying to force feed stuff. So I was like, all right, well, carbs are my primary fuel source. And then so that linked up and caused me to think, okay, well, even when I was racing, carbs are my primary fuel source. My body's operating at a high intensity. Carbs are what my body needs. So Claire taught me that and got me to focus on that a little bit more and prioritize it a little bit more. So I was just fueling my body with whatever. My thought process when I was racing was just, and even when I started doing the fitness comps, was any food's good food. Like food is energy. So that's why I'd like force feed a burger or chips or whatever we were having at the track, sandwiches, whatever it was, because I was like, oh, I need the energy. And even Dad would say to me, get some food and you need energy for the afternoon. But that's not how it works with the body. And that's what Claire was able to teach me. So the thing that you need to know here is all foods are broken up into 3 what's called macronutrients, okay? So 3 sources of fuel. You got proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Now, some foods have multiple of those in one food, okay? Some foods might just have more of one than the other, okay? So some foods might be very high in carbs, but low in fat and low in protein. One might be very high in protein, but low in fat, low in carbs. You might have something that's like a even spread of protein, fats, and carbs in that particular food. And so the way that you know what's in something is you look at you can look at the packet, the nutrition label. But for me, where I was at when I was racing, even that was probably a bit too far ahead for where I was at with nutrition. I needed it simplified a little bit, not reading nutrition labels everywhere. So what you need to know is that there are 3 fuel sources your body can use. Your body can use protein as energy, it can use fats as energy, and it can use carbs as energy. It can use all 3 of those. But those 3 fuel types is your body loves some of those fuel types and it doesn't like some of the other ones. So think about it for your bike, right? You can get race fuel for your bike, or you can get a shitty E85 to run it on, okay? Which fuel is your bike gonna run better on? Obviously race fuel, okay? We don't wanna be putting E85 in. If we've got the choice, we wanna put race fuel in. We want the good stuff. And that's the same for your body. So the race fuel for our body is carbs. Carbs is the race fuel, okay? The protein and fats are your E85s. So we don't want those going into our body. So simple things that you can do to get carbs in on race day is like have a carb gel before you go out and race. If you're doing longer enduro races, have a couple of carb gels every hour to make sure that you're topping up your carbs all the way through the race and you've got your energy maximized. Obviously with that takes a bit more effort, doesn't it? Because you're now thinking about more stuff. Before you might have just thought about the bike and setup and the track and getting all your gear ready. And this adds another element to getting ready and getting organized every week. But what you've got to think about is, all right, the bike's probably 50% of the package. The ride is probably the other 50% in terms of getting your best result on race day. So you have to make a decision. Do you want to just focus on getting the bike ready and always be the rider that's letting the bike down? Or do you want to start putting the effort into actually getting the rider ready so you can perform as well as what the bike is? The second pillar is the fuel type. Okay, so how to give your body what it needs when it needs without force feeding food. So as I said, like when I was racing, it was always like, I remember Dad always saying to me at lunchtime, like, you know, get some food in, you got to eat some food, you got to go get some breakfast in, you got to have energy for the day, you got lots of racing today, blah, 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 okay? But the thing that's hard is like, I didn't feel like eating on race day because I was like nervous and stressed and thinking about the racing, and I probably didn't sleep very well because I was thinking about racing as well. And so I didn't want to eat food, but I was just like forcing it in, and then you force it in, and then you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh shit, I got all this food sitting in my stomach, and you feel worse because like you feel sick because you got all this crap in your stomach. So it wasn't until later on, it wasn't until after I'd actually finished racing and I was doing a little bit of research and reading and studying on psychology and stress and how that works with the body. And so I was reading, I can't remember exactly where I learned it, but I remember reading that when the body's under stress, it shuts down non-essential systems in the body. So the way our bodies are programmed is our bodies are traditionally cavemen, okay, or cave women. We're designed to be out in the wild, out in the caves, hunting and gathering, okay? Our bodies, like we've modernized and we've got houses and all that now, but our bodies are still have that same infrastructure and same equipment that we were designed for to survive in the caveman days. So in the caveman days, the only time your body would really be under stress is if you were being attacked, okay? So like if you had like a lion that was trying to maul you and you're trying to get away from it, that would be stressful because your body wants to keep you alive, the lion's trying to kill you, that puts you under threat, that puts you in a high level of stress. So what happens in that moment is your body needs to give you a lot more energy. It heightens your senses, okay? You become more focused. That's why like when you have that level, like that adrenaline feeling from riding and racing, you tend to get like laser focused, you can see stuff, your hearing's a little bit more accurate, like everything's like, your senses are really switched on and ready to go. And the reason that happens is because your body does that as a protective mechanism to get you away from that threat, to get you away from the lion. And then once you've got away, then that stress response disappears and you go back to normal. The reason it shuts down all non-essential systems in the body is because when you're trying to get away from that lion, your body doesn't need to digest food, because digesting food right now is not a problem. What the problem is at the moment is getting away from this lion so that you can survive. So it's not focusing on digesting food, it's shutting down that system so it can use that energy for other systems to help to get you away from the threat. Now the problem is now for today is like you might go to a ride or race and it triggers that same stress response. Your body doesn't know that you're not under threat and you're not dying, but that stress is still there. Your body still responds the same way. And so that's why I realized at that point, I was like, shit, all right, cool. Well, that makes sense because every time I go and race, I don't feel like eating because I'm stressed. But also when I go and train, like when I go and train or I go to the gym and I train hard, I also don't feel like eating. Like it takes me a little bit after I train to calm down and feel like eating. And that made sense to me. I was like, because my body's under stress. So there's different types of stress. There's stress from like my body's under a physical load stress, like I'm exercising really hard or I'm racing really hard. There's stress as in like I'm nervous and anxious about the race that's about to come up. There's stress as in like you had a fight with your missus type stress. There's all different types of stress, but the body doesn't know any different. It just thinks you're dying. So it shuts down those non-essential systems. So how do we get around that? So that's when I'd taken that on board. I'd taken on board what Claire had said with carbs. I was all right. And then I'd read this about stress and psychology, and I was like, that's interesting as well. So I was like, well, how can we get nutrients in? How can we get the stuff we need in if like I can't stomach all the food and get the carbs in? And I was like, all right. I was like, that's when I had a bit of a breakthrough. That's when I was like, that's liquids, that's supplements. Like I was against supplements for so long, but then when I read this, I was like, bang, that's the purpose of supplements. So our body needs those carbs and needs that energy, right? But our body doesn't want to digest food. So how do you get the carbs in? That's where liquids come in, okay? So you can use supplements in a liquid form to bypass the digestive system. So what we're doing is instead of giving our body a whole heap of food that has to take a lot of energy to break down, we're giving it in liquid form. The food, the nutrients are mostly broken down. The digestive system has a very small amount of work to do to give our body the energy it needs. So that's where you can use things like, you can use fruit. Fruit's mostly water and sugar, so your fruit is easy to digest. Obviously with fruit, you've got some which are more water-based and some which are more dense. Like an orange or watermelon, very water-based, easy to digest. Something like a banana, a lot harder to digest. So you can use those, but you can also use like carb gels. Okay, it's in gel form, in gel texture, gel form, so easy to digest. Or you can use liquids. You could use like a carbohydrate drink. You could use something like a Powerade or a sports drink, which is high in carbohydrates as well, in liquid form. So the key is consistently getting those in liquid form throughout the ride, throughout the race day. And you can do that in multiple ways, which we'll get to in a sec. But again, more extra work, right? To be able to get your body ready. But you have to make a decision. You have to go, all right, if the bike's doing 50% of the work and I'm doing 50% of the work, I need to put at least a little bit of preparation into getting my body ready. Because if I just keep getting the bike ready, then I'm going to get out there, I'm going to be cooked, I'm going to ride like shit. And that's what used to happen for me. It's like the bike would be ready. We had the pro circuit motor, the suspension done, new bikes every couple of years, like everything ready to go on the bike. And then I would be the thing that would let the bike down. And just because I didn't know what to do, but I also wasn't putting the effort and energy into me that was going into the bike. Pillar 3 is the fuel strategy for your specific type of riding, okay? Without compromising your race results or adding too much extra mental load to actually riding and racing the bike. It's all well and good to say, get the carbs in and do this and do that, but if that's all you're thinking about the whole race, that's not going to help your racing either. So generally we work with 3 types of enduro racers, okay? So we've got the hard enduro guys, we've got the cross-country enduro guys. So like we've got the hard enduro guys, which would be like, grassroots, Australian off-roads, or, not Australian off-roads, grassroots, like Wildwood, like Romaniacs, Erzberg, like Roof of Africa, those types of events. Then we've got the cross-country guys, which is like your AORC, Vic off-roads, state level enduro stuff, maybe like reliability trials as well that we have here in Australia. And then you've got the desert racing guys, which is like Think Desert Race, Hattah Desert Race, Kalgoorlie Desert Race, Don River Dash, Yellow Mountain, those types of events. So the problem that I came across when I was coaching, all right, so I'd learnt this stuff. I was like, all right, cool. We need Claire taught me about the carbs and the importance of carbs. It was great. I learnt like the psychology side about the stress response shutting down the digestive system, so we should use liquids. It's like, cool, I've got this dialed for our guys. But what would happen is some guys would come back to me and be like, yeah, that was awesome. That was really cool. Got so much energy, nailed it. And then other guys would come back to me and be like, yeah, Andrew, like I couldn't do it. Like I was at Fink and I know you told me to put my Powerade in my Camelback, but I couldn't get my Camelback in because I was riding so fast and I ended up not drinking it. And then I got dehydrated and I ran out of energy. And I was like, oh shit. And then we'd have other guys that would be like hard enduro guys that would be like, yeah, Andrew, like I know you told me to have those carb gels, but I just couldn't get the carb gels out because I was already stopping and starting a lot for the hard enduro stuff that I was doing. Like I didn't want to waste extra time, even more time stopping to stop and have a carb gel, as well as all the other time I spent stopping to get through certain sections. I was like, oh shit, all right. I was like, well, the problem here is these guys know what they need to get in and they know that their digestive system's not working, but the strategy is not working with the actual racing. It's interfering with the racing. And that's the last thing we want, right? We want the nutrition to be so easy that you can just get the energy that you need and focus on the racing, not have your mind going, oh shit, I've got to get my camelback in, I've got to get this in, got to get that in. So that's when I had to adapt the strategy more to the riders and racers that we're working with. So to give you guys the simple solution to that, the strategy that we came up with is desert racing guys are riding fast. And one of the hardest things about riding fast is you might have a camelback on, but it's very hard to just take your hand off the handlebar and put your straw in your mouth when you're going 130 kilometers an hour through the desert, right? Because you don't want to die. So what we came up with for those guys is instead of encouraging them to use Powerade in their camelback and get their carbs in that way, is what we get them to do is we get them to use a carb gel and strap that carb gel to their fuel drum. So what happens is when they come in for their fuel stop, which they have to have because the bike's going to run out of fuel, while the bike's getting fueled up, they take that carb gel off and they have the carb gel while the bike's getting fueled up. So there's no extra wasted time. There's no like trying to think about it while you're riding. While the bike's getting fueled up and you literally can't do anything, you're fueling your body at the same time. So I was like, cool. When we started doing that with our riders, now I was like, bang, now we've got a good strategy because now these guys can do this and it doesn't interfere with the racing and they've got the energy for their body. Then on the other side, all right, the hard enduro guys. How do we tackle the hard enduro guys? Well, the hard enduro guys are the opposite. The hard enduro guys, they're already doing a lot of stop starting. They don't want to do any more stop starting because they're going to waste more time and be slower. So for those guys, they don't want to be stopping to have a carb gel. And they're probably not refueling as frequently because they're not riding as hard as the desert racing guys. So their refuels are a lot further apart. So for those guys, we encourage them to use liquids in their camelback, use carbohydrate drink or Powerades in their camelback to get their carbs in. Because now when they're going through like say a rock garden and they're really struggling, they can still struggle through that rock garden and quickly put the straw in their mouth and get all their carbs in that they need. Or if they're doing a hill climb, okay, or waiting to going on like some single trail before they're getting to the next section, they can easily put their straw in because they're not going at high speeds, they're not moving very fast. So that strategy works better for the hard enduro guys. And then for the cross country guys, can be a mix of both. Depends on the type of riding and depends what the rider prefers. They can use the carb gels and the Powerade in the camelback, or they can use one on the other depending on the type of riding and what they feel comfortable with. So again, you have to be able to make a decision, don't you? It's like, again, it is extra work, right? It's extra work, extra preparation, extra organization, but you have to realize, all right, cool. You've got 50% of the result that you're about to get is the bike, and the other 50% is the rider. Have we put just as much effort into getting the rider ready as we have the bike? If you haven't, then that's probably a good opportunity for you to go, all right, I need to dial this in and get it set up. If you continue to put your effort into the bike, which is okay, you can do that, but it just means your body's not going to perform to the best of its ability, which means your bike, because your body is riding the bike, your bike's not going to be able to perform to the best of its ability either. So hopefully you found that our race day nutrition system helpful. I know it was really helpful for me when I was racing, and I know our riders and racers find it really helpful as well. If you'd like some help building your endurance on the bike, building your strength, your fitness, and dialing in your nutrition, you can apply to be part of our Faster Laps program. If you'd like to be part of it, or you'd like to find out some more information, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram and send me a direct message with the word race fit, and I'll send you all the details, and then we can go from there.